great conspiracy. How did I get?
Yeah, it's kind of a creepy place, because there's no light at all.
A lot of experiments out there.
Plutonium, nuclear weapon.
Nuclear destruction. They're just balls of light. There's a ghost in the house.
All right. Broadcasting from just outside the Napa Valley wine country through the mystical Sonoma Mountains. This is Beyond Strange. Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. Got a great one for you tonight. It is January 19th, 2020. Looks like we got a good game going for Super Bowl Sunday in 2 weeks. So that'll be interesting. But anyways, tonight it's about Beyond Strange. And tonight we have Mr. Dr. Professor. Now we have Bruce R. Fenton with us tonight. And it's going to be awesome. I've had Bruce on the show before, and it's been a while since we talked, but yeah, it's going to be awesome. So I'm really glad to see everyone in the Strange chat tonight. I see Night Stalker and Jen, Brother Gigi, Cherie was in there earlier. My good buddy Russ Bailey, big time supporter of the show. He's awesome. Yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah. Sweet. Glad to see everyone in there. And for the folks at YouTube right now, glad you're in there. And I'll be popping in and out once in a while over there as well. But my home is in the Strange Chat Discord channel. So let's get this going. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Strange Days 2015. And also go to the Strange Chat Discord channel. We're just talking about that. Ask for an invite to the Discord channel or go to beyondthestrange.com. Click on the chat tab. And it's a very painless process. I promise you it's all good. That way I can see you in the chat and do shout outs like, hey, Jen. Hey, Bill. Hey, Cherie. Great to see all you guys. So, yeah, it's Night Stalker. Titans lost, so we dodged the apocalypse. It's possible. I got to talk to you, Night Stalker, about the Titans because I've been watching DC's Titans as well, and it's funny because in one of the episodes, this one guy's like, "Well, didn't the Titans actually lose to Zeus?" So he's like, you're with a bunch of losers. I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny, but yeah, we got, who is it? The Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. For a second there, I thought it was going to be a repeat of, I believe the first Super Bowl was the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs. So yeah, almost repeat. That would have been interesting. So we'll have to see the results of that. Russ Bailey, let's go Chiefs. All right, man. I am an AFC fan, so I'm with you. Let's do it. So anyways, I digress. Back to what we were talking about. Subscribe to the Beyond the Strange YouTube channel. Also, you can find the show's social media on Facebook, Instagram, all under Beyond the Strange. Links are on the website. You can also find the podcast for the show later on iTunes, Google Play, Spreaker, and Stitcher. And please remember to leave a like and or comment for the show and hit that follow button. Please. If you're listening to the podcast, if there's any way to give me some feedback, hell, you know what? Forget about the follow button. Forget about all that. Just send me an email, beyondthestrange@gmail.com, and let me know what you think of the show. You know, there's a couple of little rascals out there who like to hit the thumbs down on the YouTube channel. I know it's the same people every time. It's pretty funny. But you know what cracks me up? They take the time to listen to the show so they can put the thumbs down. It's so stupid. But, you know, if you got some constructive criticism, which I do listen to, send me an email, beyondthestrange@gmail.com. So, yeah, that would be really cool if you could do that. Keep checking the Beyond the Strange website for future updates, merchandise, giveaways, and prizes. Hey, they do happen. So get over there and subscribe. And I did a whole bunch of emails yesterday I was getting back to. So, yeah, I'm telling you, it does happen. So check it out. Subscribe at the website. And while you're there, show your love to the show by donating. And it's very easy. Just click on the Support Us tab, and anything helps. Anything over $20 will get you a t-shirt or a book or both. Matter of fact, last week, it was Dr. Heather Lynn, and we talked a little bit after the show. She was so happy to be on the show last week and to interact with all of y'all that she told me that she is willing to give me or send me some of her merch for her books, her, I don't know, keychains or something like that. I have no idea. But she's willing to send that to me to give to you Beyonders. And, you know, I need to know who you are. So subscribe or send some donations or something. That'd be great. But again, it happens. Giveaways, prizes, all that stuff. And pretty soon there will be a store for the Beyonders. So keep checking the website. Working on a newsletter. It will be coming out soon. And yeah, it's all good stuff. So anyways, what's going on in Discord? There's so much stuff. What's happening here? They're saying the Night Stalker, and if J-Lo does any type of Phoenix or Firebird stuff during the halftime show, that'll fit too. Oh man, I'm so tired of these halftime shows. I don't know who would like to join me on one of my shows about the symbolism of these halftime shows, but I know I did one with Ryan Gable of The Secret Teachings here on the Fringe FM. And it's so creepy. Some of the things, these Illuminati filled, I don't even know what you want to call them, but to me, it's just so crazy. The people in the know just like with their jaws dropped. It's like, really? They're doing that? And, you know, people who don't realize that a lot of this stuff is really happening, you know, they have no clue. No clue. But, I will do that, Russ Bailey. Bumper stickers on the way, my friend. So that'd be awesome. Sweet. Right on. Okay. But yeah, the halftime shows, they just get worse and worse. I mean, you know, even the tribute to Prince was a setup, and I'm not going to go into it. We got some different stuff to get into tonight. But yeah, any of you guys want me to do a show about the, you know, Super Bowl stuff? We'll definitely do that. We'll leave the lines open. Tonight, 1-800-588-9790. 0335, courtesy of Mr. Joe Roop and the Fringe FM. That is the phone number, 800-588-0335. We'll take your calls after the first break. So, all right, let's get this show rolling. Jeez, I'm taking way too much time. Bruce R. Fenton is the author of The Revolutionary Human Origins ebook, Forgotten Exodus, and Into Africa Theory of Human Evolution. He was born in the historic English town of Cheltenham, England, and is an information systems graduate of Anglia Ruskin University. Bruce has earned the respect of his peers and made a name for himself in the research fields of ancient mysteries and human consciousness. A world traveler and public speaker, Bruce's research activities have been featured in the UK's Telegraph newspaper and on the popular science channel, the Unexplained Files show. Bruce is a current member of both the Palaeoanthropology Society and the Scientific and Medical Network. He is currently working on an extended print version of his new book, and you can find more information about Bruce at www.brucefenton.info and hybridhumans.net. Let me make sure Bruce is on the line. Hang on, let me get a second here. We'll give Bruce a call and see if he's ready. But, yeah. That is Bruce's bio. So let's see if we got Bruce on the line here. Any second now. All right, I heard something. Bruce,
hello. I am. Yep. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah. Oh, cool. You might want to turn that down in the background. We're gonna get some echo in.
Is that better? I've moved the microphone.
There we go.
How you doing? Keeping well?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we just went over your bio. I think you were listening. I hope I didn't miss anything.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so look forward to having a chat. It's nice to be back on with you.
Very exciting. Thank you again, Bruce, for coming on so late, man. I know it's 3:00 in the morning over there. Yeah. And, again, we'll do this next time with a pre-record show. But
that's right. Yeah, it's just the unfortunate thing about time zones.
So crazy. I am so sorry. But I am so ecstatic. We got a room full of people in the chat. And you're live on the Fringe FM. We're reaching out to thousands of people on the airwaves on the internet. So it's going to be great. I know it's always a great, interesting time talking to you. And yeah, man, this is all good. So did you get to watch any football?
No, I have to admit, I'm not a big sports person. I have to admit, it's a tricky one because usually when you meet you meet new people, one of the first questions for guys that comes up in it is like, who do you support? Who are your teams? What sports you're into? And yeah, it's always it's an awkward one sometimes, especially in the UK where football is massive. If you don't have a team, you're a bit of a pariah sometimes.
That's all right. You guys got football, soccer, so or rugby, right?
Well, yeah, because we call what you call soccer is football, and then rugby football as well. Rugby football is massive where I live now in Wales. It's a huge deal. But yeah, I can't say I'm not a massive fan. I had to do it at school. That was my last encounter with rugby.
Yeah, that's some tough stuff, man. People walk away with some teeth missing and limps.
Yeah, there's no body armor, not like with American football. If you get whacked into, it's pretty full on. There's nothing to protect you. So it can be a violent game. It can be. Regularly having people getting teeth knocked out and broken bones and stuff.
Jeez, yeah, that's pretty tough, man. Those guys are brutal, but respect for sure. But yeah, I mean, we can even talk about because we're going to go into some deep conversation about human origins tonight. And I think that's awesome, dude. I mean, what you do, and not a lot of people take this on to just find out where we came from and what's headed for the human race. So, well, let's get started by asking you, where did you grow up at?
Yeah, I'm from a little town called Stroud, which is in the southwest of the UK. But if people sort of know, I suppose probably the biggest landmark that folks will know is probably Stonehenge. I'm about 2 hours, or just London, about an hour and a half to the north of sort of Stonehenge. So people have a kind of idea where that is. It's kind of towards the Welsh border between England and Wales. Stroud, you'll find it near the river there. But yeah, it's a nice area, rolling hills, lots of ancient sites. There's a lot of Neolithic sites, which one of the things I guess perhaps maybe partly why I got interested in these topics. I suppose when you're young, you don't fully question who made those stone structures, right, or what they are. But I think it's in the background. So somewhere in the back of your head, there's a bit of a mystery there around you, because it's really the southwest of the UK is where most of the stone circles, the long barrows and round barrows, the majority of the structures are there, and also into Wales, where they've got quite a lot, which currently I'm based in Wales. The rest of the UK is not so much. Yes, it tends to be the southwest and Wales. So we're a bit spoilt for choice if you're in that area. So I think that growing up around that, definitely has influenced my thinking.
I got to turn on that mute button if I want to talk. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, that's right. No
it
worries.
Usually works that way. But yeah, that's cool. Never been out that way myself. Always been a California kid. Kind of stayed on the shores of the United States, the U.S. So been to a couple of states, but never out of the country. So
well, you got a lot of choice there. It's a big country, and
pretty big. Yeah, pretty big. I mean, I have been to Mexico, of course. Visit my family back there, but yeah, it is a pretty big continent. But
have you been to any of the old temple sites and stuff? You made it down that way to Mexico? Or?
Yeah, that's one thing I need to do. I mean, it's like I try to strategically plan my vacations. If I'm going to go somewhere, I want to make it worth my while. You know what I mean? So yeah, the next time I go out and see the folks, I'm probably going to take some time out to see the pyramids down there if I can.
Yeah, definitely worthwhile. I mean, I've only been to a few, but I spent a couple of weeks over there. I was in the Yucatan, went to several sites around there on the Caribbean coast, and then took a bus up to Palenque and spent a few days there. Amongst roving around through the forest there, loads of not fully excavated temples and things in the forest, which is quite amazing, because you see the famous images of the site, and there's obviously the main buildings like the palace, the temple of Pakal, and a few others. But then when you walk into the forest around it, there's hundreds of structures that are just still buried in in mud and covered in trees and stuff. So you get that real clash of seeing what they're really what they were really like, I guess, when the place was rediscovered, as well as the areas that have been really cleared that, you can go into structures and stuff. It's definitely worth it. If you ever get to Palenque, I would definitely highly recommend that as one of the main sites. Of course, the one that's made famous by Eric von Daniken's, linking it to possible alien visitation, and I'm sure listeners will know the lid of Pakal's sarcophagus, on which is this image that, Eric von Daniken certainly, suggested might be an alien spaceship. So that's one of the reasons why it's so famous, of course.
Yeah, it's just amazing the Mayans left for us. So lots of stuff too about what the Mayan calendar is. It's still in the news. I've been hearing a lot about time and what's happening with the calendar. It's fascinating. It's all fascinating. So what got you started in this field?
Well, I mean, I suppose originally it was in a strange way. My grandmother, I suppose, because she used to have these little collectible cards that came free with her tea leaves, and each one had a mystery on it. And there was a whole complete set. I think it's 40 cards of ancient mysteries, and they had the full range. The crystal skulls, pyramids, lake monsters, Bigfoot. Psychic powers. And each card would have a little bit of details. It'd have an image, and you get this whole set collected together in a little book you could stick them in, and I think they just really sort of captivated me. It's just sort of fascinating, going through these little snippets about these strange mysteries that have never been solved and phenomena that we don't understand. And I think that really was probably my first, I suppose, in any sort of deep level exposure to so many of these topics. And that was, I must be about 11 years old. And then after that, I guess took an interest in things like, ghosts and the paranormal. And then obviously over time, well, after the teenage years, we know you're more focused on going out and, having fun and all the rest of it. But I think probably around 20 odd, I started to delve a bit deeper into more serious books, in these subjects. And then over time had my own experiences, strange experiences, as well as sort of a deeper dive into the research material itself, which kind of led on to what I'd have to call, I suppose, my life path as a fairly sort of serious researcher in these anomalous topics.
Did you ever get into any esoteric stuff like card reading and or numerology or anything like that?
Yeah, I was a card reader for a while on a website called Cassamba, which I think is still around as even Cassamba Live Person, where you can, people can log on and they can get online readings. I worked on there for a while. I've also done readings, for free for people, friends and stuff, probably when I was in my early 20s, when I first sort of was dabbling with that, practicing with that. And also, I think in my early 20s, did a little bit of mediumship development. Gave a few messages, probably not loads. I think maybe 4 or 5 spirit messages to people, relatively accurate from what they tell me. Of course, only the other person can really judge. But yeah, I've had a few of those that have come through me, which have been quite random, but quite fascinating. Particularly when it's people you just don't know anything about. In one case, I was in a pub. And literally just felt like there was a message for this guy there that was kind of doing some charity work or something there. And I gave him some names. I said, the names I'm getting are Dave and David, and that there's this woman that is worried about a thing you keep doing that's, she's concerned about. He told me, basically that the thing we were at was actually a kind of memorial for his mum who had passed over, and that the thing that he was doing that she'd been worried about was gambling, and that Dave and David was actually the brother and the father of this guy. So it was all, hyper relevant, and it was just some guy in a pub, I'd never met before. So when you get things like that, obviously it's very hard for anyone to just explain away, as the lucky guesses, whether you'd get, 2 of their closest family members and that, that kind of thing. So yeah, those sort of things are pretty extraordinary, but I can't say that I have the consistency, that other, professional psychic mediums have, where they can do it every day, and I'm accurate. It was just a few times, but yeah, that I've experienced. Dabbled a bit in, Ouija board for a while. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to people, but I did when I was at university. I went for a sort of phase of interest in that, and did experiments with that. So yeah, I've dabbled in different areas of occult experimentation, as well as research in that area as well. Reading up on psychic abilities and seeing ways you can develop your psychic abilities, and had quite a lot of experiences with telepathy, also psychometry, and yeah, a few things, astral travel and stuff. Yeah, I'd say probably most of the full gamut of strange phenomena, including some really weird ones, like a sort of an astral time travel type event I had back in 2002, which was literally very peculiar. One of the things that really sort of, I suppose, redirected my life in some respects. That one moment I was in my room and everything was fairly normal. I was just talking on a chat, a chat room where you used to, of course, you didn't used to have cameras, so just typing. And the next thing, I was out of my body, flying over a jungle. There was a jungle scene below me. Ahead of me, a stepped pyramid. I was not really that au fait on whether it was Mayan or Aztec or whatever at the time, but there was a pyramid there. It was obviously, it looked to me like it was very new. It was like gleaming white. Flew towards it. I was aware of information that was kind of coming into my mind from somewhere, that it was basically that there was a village nearby that I couldn't see, and that there were people I couldn't see, and that there was a secret tunnel in the top of this pyramid. All this stuff was coming out, and then it was like bang, suddenly I was back in my body. And that was actually kind of really one of the fundamental events that got me interested in the Maya, and particularly the Maya calendar, which then I ended up creating a website, 2012rising.com, which was obviously linked to the 2012 subject, and particularly the Mayan calendar and the coming end of the long count. And that really, I was running that for probably about 5-6 years or something. I ran that website, maybe more than that. So I mean, it really did, redirect me. I ended up going to Palenque eventually, actually, and as I say, going to some of the Maya sites. And again, that all came out of really of that, trying to understand what was happening. So I started reading up on, these ancient structures and, the cultures, and trying to understand really where that was and what it was about, why I'd had that experience. So that kind of, as a psychical or supernatural event, really changed the course of my life. So just in a few moments,
like Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot of paranormal, esoteric experiences have happened to you in your life before you started getting more into the science.
Yes,
What is our origins and how it's related to. I mean, there's so many different directions we can go into tonight. I know that you definitely want to talk about the past cataclysmic events that happened, which is definitely something I want to get into, because I think it's going to give us an idea of what we need to expect. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of these sort of, obviously cyclical cataclysms or challenges and disasters that humanity has faced. Again, I can back a little bit there. That I think the Maya calendar, is linked to these kind of cycles as well, and in fact, has some vast timescales on it. One of which is I'm trying to remember the name of the cycle, but there's a particular cycle on the long count system which takes you back around about just over 64 million years. Right, there's one cycle that they measured, which is over 64 million years. And if you think about that, that takes you back to the event that, the destruction of the dinosaurs and the beginning of what we think of now as like the mammalian age. Now, isn't that a funny coincidence that there's actually a cycle in the long count which takes you back to the beginning of the age of the mammals, right? So as if, somehow that's encoded into there, that, following the cataclysm, that was what led to, the end of, obviously, the rule of the dinosaurs, and then the beginning of small mammals that went on to become us. So I've always thought that's kind of an interesting one, considering the other sort of supernormal links to the Maya culture, that the claims that they were in contact with other entities that were knowledgeable, and that maybe in some sense that they accessed information from a time traveling or time aware entity or cultures or something like that. Because I always find it very curious to find that they would measure a cycle so close to that that date.
Very interesting. So many. Again, this is just amazing information. I don't think they taught this in high school.
No, and I think that's, even what I said, there's quite an obscure one. Even people that have heard of, say, the long count calendar will mostly be familiar with this, obviously, of course, the countdown to 2012 and the one long count cycle, but they won't really be familiar with these longer cycles. And so, there's others. I mean, that's just the longest one that I'm aware of, but there's other quite lengthy ones. One of them, in fact, takes you to around about the age of, the hominins, really, the Homo age. So, yeah, it's quite funny. I mean, I won't get too much into it, but I do think that if you look carefully at the the Maya culture, there's what I consider to be fingerprints of a connection with a higher alien intelligence or cosmical intelligence or some kind of time traveling culture that has left its fingerprints in their complex calendar systems and in other elements there. Now, that doesn't mean that the aliens built the pyramids or anything like that, but what I see is that there's evidence of contact with somebody that has a grander awareness of the universe, put it that way.
Do you feel that the Mayans were spot on?
I think that they're right. That I think these systems really are tracking major change events. I think that 2012 was a kind of a changeover into a new era for us.
Definitely.
And if you look at the way things are going in the world today, I mean, it's astonishing. And just in the last few years, since 2012, I would say there's been an acceleration in the sort of emergence of all sorts of strange knowledge. I mean, obviously we've had this huge sort of hoo-ha about, the UFOs and the ATIP program, CTSA, but also, major radical changes in governmental systems around the world.
Sure.
Also, I think that there's an uptick in UFOs and an uptick in reports of sorts of paranormal phenomena. I think we're seeing a major cultural shift, paradigm shift. And I think that's what they were tracking. That in some sense that they're aware that there's these cycles where, suddenly things go into like a head spin, and then there's a major change in the culture. So rather than it being, like a destruction event or anything super obvious, on that day kind of thing, it's more subtle that it turns out that it's, a switch over to something quite bizarre and different.
Do you feel like it's more, and in terms of the 2012 event, do you feel like it was more of an ending of something or more of a beginning of something?
Yeah, both. I mean, the ending and beginning wrapped into one. That what we're seeing is a crossover time between two eras. One that was far more materialistic, and all our sciences were much more focused on the material, whereas now we're starting to have, the flow of scientific discoveries and articles has been astonishing in terms of, questioning the fundamental nature of reality. I've seen, there's things coming out now that that maybe time is fundamentally cyclical. The universe, it turns out, it's not behaving in the way they expect it to, speeding up. And,
right.
I think just the other day, dark matter looks like it's being debunked, and string theory's on its way out, and there's this 8-dimensional E8 model and stuff. I mean, it's just been a flow of really profound, strange discoveries about the nature of reality, heading away from the materialist physical model, and also I've seen a flow of articles lately about the reality of how aliens could have spread around the universe, and that we need to stop thinking that they would be limited to far distant suns trapped on their planet. That there's no reason why alien civilizations couldn't have populated the entire Milky Way, that there's been enough time. And if we look at the way stars move, that in fact in many cases stars actually get closer to each other, right? So there's a few articles that come out lately saying how it would have been fairly easy for a civilization to simply hop between stars and take advantage of the fact that stars are actually moving relative to each other. And that so when we think about the stars being far away, we forget that that's not always been the case. And that, for example, just a quick one, that 70,000 years ago, a star actually passed through the Oort cloud of our solar system, right? The most external part of this solar system. That a star passed through there. So, I mean, it's obviously, in relative terms, very close. And so if you think of that had been a star with planets and they were inhabited, it wouldn't have been hard at all for them to, to take a cruise across and visit Earth. And indeed, in the future, there's going to be other stars that come very close to us. So we have to be very careful. The limitations that we've had in our minds are beginning to get lifted. And we've even seen that in academic sciences, where they're starting to tell us, what, a lot of our assumptions and limitations, turns out they're not really true when you get a greater understanding of the cosmos and how things work.
Right.
And that's really happening across the board. And I think that is that changeover from the old and the new, with this old, limiting materialist view, to a new, more expansive and more ethereal kind of view. But we're somewhere in the middle where it's all mixed up together.
So it's not just happening here on Earth; it's happening all across the universe.
Well, that's certainly possible. I mean, I think that we have to understand that the universe is basically, a closed system, that, everything within it affects, everything within it. In the same way we talk about closed systems, it is a closed system. I mean, certainly if we look at the Milky Way, I mean, obviously there's, as I say, there's ways that things can spread between the stars and stuff. So we have to start thinking differently, that it's not us isolated, out there, and that, everything else is separate and, doesn't affect us. It's really not like that. It's a very dynamic system that we're in. They've even come up with, the idea that the black hole in the middle of the galaxy may be usable as a portal for traveling through. I mean, that would have been unthinkable to have come out in the news even, 5 years ago or so, right? But just recently, I think that's about a year or two back, that's come out that they now realize that the black hole may actually be a transversal wormhole or something, that because very large, slow rotating black holes, it turns out you can potentially pass through them in a ship unscathed. Now, we obviously grew up with the idea that black holes would absolutely crush you, stretch you, that nothing could go in and go out. It turns out, even that has been fundamentally questioned. So it may be that there's things popping in and out of that black hole, from other, systems. Maybe that links us to the Andromeda galaxy or something. Who knows? So I think that there's a lot of things that are being raised, in terms of the way in which everything in our universe could be interlinked and how things could flow, life or energies can flow through the universe in ways that we wouldn't have imagined before. So again, I think there's huge changes underway in our understanding.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting question just came in through the Strange Chat in Discord. We have Sizzy G. I hope that's how you pronounce it. What is his thoughts, you Bruce? Thoughts about myth and religious stories are based on the zodiac, and does Bruce know anything about the 13th zodiac sign, and would these signs help us travel?
Well, I'm not big on the astrology, but however, of course, it does encode information from the past, and that's, how we've ended up with these star signs. They had a value. Obviously, the ancient people understood that by, monitoring the cycles of the stars, you could get usable information about when you wanted to sow seeds or certain cycles in nature, that there was it was utilized in a way that we could time events in a time before we had obviously digital systems that told us everything. But on top of that, obviously we have coded information in the stories of the different stars systems, of course, like we have in the way the Greeks gods did. Obviously we have these stories that obviously taught us lessons about both the past and about ourselves, and that was encoded into the story of the stars. The 13th zodiac sign is quite interesting because Ophiuchus, which is basically is the only one of the zodiac signs which is actually supposedly based on a real person for a start, which is quite interesting. So there are others are kind of mythical god figures. Ophiuchus isn't. There's also the serpent bearer, and it brings in that story of the serpent, which have gone through our history. The serpent has been probably the only character you can really trace right back to the earliest age of the modern humans, and that has been fundamental to mythologies all around the world. So it's quite interesting to see that Ophiuchus is the serpent bearer, a guy holding a serpent, and that energy, which is towards the end of the year, I don't know the exact dates, but it's in December, that basically, you've got links to, what's the word now I'm thinking, like alchemy and alchemical narratives that are connected to that, and with people born under that sign being supposedly more psychic, more kind of intuitive and whatnot. But it's interesting because it's kind of the hidden zodiac sign, and also connects to the time of year when we have basically the solstice alignments and this idea of the galactic center is sort of towards the galactic center. So if you have the sun rising into Ophiuchus, which is towards the galactic center, again, is that to do with the serpent bearer? Is there a serpent rope, a wormhole or something that goes from that galactic center? Again, so these narratives sometimes we see in the stars may be teaching us something about an understanding that's lost, an understanding of the cosmos. So I find that quite interesting, quite intriguing.
Very intriguing. And, going back with the serpents, I noticed that the Mayans use a lot of serpent representation and symbology in a lot of what they did. What's that all about?
Yeah, look, I have a couple of views because it's such a broad subject, the serpent in ancient history. But if you go to what I would say is the oldest source for this, or certainly the oldest known cultural sources, then you're taken down to Australia and the Aboriginals, whose mythologies and oral history are known to go back, certainly into the many thousands, if not tens of thousands. I think accepted limits go back to around the Younger Dryas, but I believe some of those stories go back even further. So, I mean, you got there, and what do we have there? Of course, we have the stories of the rainbow serpent, right? And the rainbow serpent is a fundamental key character in the shaping of the land, the impacts on sea level rises, The serpent is connected with the water. There's a male and female serpent. And we find that they have profound connections with the cycles of creation and destruction, and obviously with the stories of great floods in the past, where the serpent is obviously connected there as well. But you can go back further, and you find that in Africa there is a cave site which has been dated to, they believe, human use at the cave site goes back to around 70,000 years ago, right? And there's a rock feature within the cave that resembles a serpent's head, and it seems that this was used as a cult site where someone could stand in a position sort of behind this, where it would seem like they were speaking out of the serpent, right? And so you have this going all the way back, all the way back to 70,000 years ago, with which is when the first fully anatomically, behaviorally modern humans, hit the scene. Because before that we don't see, we don't really see fully, like us modern humans until this point. Also, that in terms of behavior, there's a kind of rapid acceleration. What we think of as the cultural revolution, the first sort of behavioral cultural revolution, occurs about 70,000 years ago. So we can really say that the serpent has been with us since the beginning of that, and that you find that this story, in my view, has been taken, around the world. And obviously, I argue in my work that all things come out of Australia. I mean, for a start, we'll go a bit more into that later, but I argue that there's been a migration out of Australia about 55,000 years ago, that the repopulating of Eurasia began after another destruction event, which was the Lake Toba supervolcano in Indonesia, which wiped out most of the hominins of Eurasia. You got a repopulating event with people coming up from that area and into East Asia, and they would have been taking with them their stories. So if they had the story of the rainbow serpent then it would have been taken with them, right? So there's this fundamental narrative, and they expand out throughout Eurasia and onwards. And of course, you also find in the Americas, down in South America, particularly Brazil, there's evidence of early humans there about 40,000 or so years ago, down in Brazil, which is the Lagoa Santa people. Right. And they have Aboriginal type skulls, right? They believe to be Australian Aboriginal type people that have entered the country long before anyone else. And again, they would have brought with them these legends, right? So I think that they handed on these stories, and that when we had the Clovis people entering the country, they met these early migrants, the remnants, and they would have adopted some of their mythology, these older, wiser, existing population there, passing it on to them. And we have the rise of the Olmec civilization, who then carry with them this serpent motif, the building of pyramids, the calendar, and all these things that appear suddenly. I think they don't appear suddenly. They are hand-me-downs from an older civilization that's already in the Americas.
That's amazing, man. This is mind-blowing stuff. I think we talked, you have brought up so much more stuff than the last time we talked. And, I'm sorry, Bruce, I failed to mention that you did have, I didn't. You have, Forgotten Exodus, the Into Africa Theory, human evolution, and the Human Hybrids book. And there's just so much to cover. All fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, there's more than I'll probably be able to cover if we talked for several days in a row. I mean, there's so many topics that I've delved into over the years, and I've got a wide interest. So I mean, really, you'll find that we can go down most any route, as long as you don't take me too far into pop music, sport, or any of those. Then I'm not so good. But as long as it's in the ancient mysteries, the strangeness, UFOs, and all the rest of that. But I have an opinion on those. Yeah, anything weird, and you'll find that I probably have an opinion on it or two.
Although there is a lot of quite weird stuff that happens in our entertainment system. So.
Well, there are actually, I mean, Hollywood and, the movie industry. I mean, that's a whole other subject. Things that are encoded into movies, sure see a lot of that. There's a lot of symbolism that goes into our culture, into advertising, movies, music. That again, you find ancient symbolism. Once you know it, once you can spot it, you spot it all over the place.
I find there's a lot of predictive programming, especially in movies. And when I look at movies like San Andreas, I say to myself, there's something they're trying to tell us, or 2012, that kind of thing. It's all great, drama and action and all that stuff, but I think there's other hidden meanings and stuff like that.
Yeah, that, and of course on the alien narratives, we usually get particular themes that repeat in different films, and yeah, it's definitely there's definitely some predictive programming goes in shaping the narrative of what we think, so that when we encounter those topics in real life, we'll link them automatically to things that we've seen, in TV and movies, so whether we like it or not, that's all in our subconscious. So, and often it's been encoded along with sorts of symbols that we may not consciously notice. Really, it's hard to notice symbols unless you're someone who knows what the symbols are, what they mean, all the rest of it. They tend to go subliminal. You just won't notice what you're looking at in front of you. Once you can see it, then it becomes sort of obvious. I mean, like, I'm just throwing out an example there. I mean, if you look at, say, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is full of all sorts of stuff. In there, you've of course got deliberate efforts there to make the obelisks look like a pyramid, with the sun rising over it. He takes the camera shot very carefully. And I said that, this is a guy, who never did, anything by accident on set, which one of things was said about him. That, and that, he does this camera angle where, of course, he tries, he makes it very clear that you're looking at a pyramid, and that with the I think it's the sunrise, the moon or the sun rising above it. Again, which is that imagery like of the the Illuminati kind of, the eye in the pyramid and all that stuff. That appears a couple of times in the film and stuff. And things like, if you don't know what you're looking at, you might think, oh, that's a nice camera angle, But then if you're someone who explores these kind of topics, then of course you think, aha, throwing you a little bit of a nugget there as to, what is the offshoots of this story? Who are we talking to here? Whose messages are we getting? Stuff like that. It's interesting. Of course, it's the same. Talking about Kubrick, of course, the same guy that gave us Eyes Wide Shut. Which is obviously a film almost entirely about an elite secret society. That's involved in all sorts of weird and occult practices. I mean, so he knew a lot of things.
He sure did. And I mean, there's a lot of people in the chat right now. They're just going on about Kubrick, and 2001: Space Odyssey was a beautiful, beyond its time. It's an amazing film, a great director, and just amazing producer and filmmaker, even possibly hoaxer. From
some people say, don't they, link it to the idea? Did he film a version at least of a moon landing, or and all sorts of stuff? But yeah, I mean, look, 2001: A Space Odyssey as well. I mean, it's got elements in it that, if people have read my work, I can say there's definitely links there, and I mentioned that in the book. Certainly in the upcoming new book, Exogenesis, I delve a bit more into that. But there's a few things that made me think, Christ, I think that Kubrick and Clarke knew more than they were saying, right, in terms of the validity of some of these ideas. Now, it may be they just intuited some things that have turned out to be kind of on the money, but again, considering that they both had, so they were both well connected people, obviously they had all sorts of good connections. Clarke was very much in with the elite, of course he was given a knighthood and all the rest of it. He was also accused of a lot of very nasty crimes, so we may be aware of his particular tastes for young men and all the rest of this, and he was accused of things in that regard. And then, of course, on the flip side, I'd say Kubrick seemed like a decent enough guy, but also, again, would have had connections in very high echelons. So it's not inconceivable that these people had access to information that they maybe wanted to encode into that film.
Yeah.
Now, strange thing is, of course, in my work, we're dealing with a glassy black material, right, which I associate with an AI craft. And there you go. And you're looking at that film. What's the center, motif of it? This black glass-like material, this obelisk that's left on the planet at the time of the first hominins, which is, again, mine is on the planet at the time of the first hominins, and is associated with a strange alien upgrade of humanity. Exactly the same narrative, right, as my work.
Yeah, they weren't exactly monkeys or apes. They looked like they were almost
early hominins. That's right. Yeah, this is done at the time of early hominins, which is exactly, again, same as me. I'm saying that these events happen in the time of hominins, not right at the beginning of the primate story. That this is an incursion when there's already something like Homo erectus, or right. So this is, again, there's a big overlap there. and that we are dealing with AI. That he talks about in the book that the beings have gone beyond simple physical and have uploaded their consciousness to AI and all this stuff. And so if you sort of follow some of these narratives, it's really, for me, it's quite weird. Looking at, I was, I'm doing the research, I'm thinking, this is really reminding me of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And again, you find if you look into some of the narratives around the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia, of course Mecca, that if you look into that, there's in the corner of the Kaaba, apart from the site itself, which has connections with the Pleiades, it's the seven and the seven sisters. The actual site, it's built there because that was a place that was supposed to be where the angels and the beings before humans would gather. Right, so there's a narrative there that it goes back to the time of visitors and angels from space or whatever, and that this site was connected to these 7 women in the water, which is, again, the 7 women in the water is a Pleiades story, which goes all the way back to the Aboriginal Australia, these mermaid-like beings associated with the 7 stars. And then at that site you have, of course, the cube, and the cube again is supposed to be associated with a lost kind of civilization, and with Abraham and Adam and all this. And then in the corner of the cube, you have these fragments of a black material, right? Which is like this holy of holies. When they go around, they kiss the corner, which is where this material is kept. Mm-hmm. Now, a number of experts, obviously, you're not allowed to take them out and analyze them, but the experts that have got as close as they can to them, they highly suspect that this is a black tektite, right? And my book is, entirely dealing with this black tektite, which I say is the remnants of an alien craft. They say that this stuff, in one of the legends, is the remnants of an angel, that when it was a white angel that was turned to black, it absorbed the sins of humanity, and that it was turned to stone for not doing its job in the Garden of Eden. And there's also these mixed narratives about it being something to do with an angel, something to do with the creation of humans, the Garden of Eden, and all this stuff. And you've got this black tektite stuff there. And again, I'm thinking, this is really surreal, because in the information I've got, that this material was turned black in a destructive event, an attack, which you could say is a sin, an evil. There was a betrayal. It was destroyed. The craft was turned to this black material, this tektite. It's connected with the creation of humans, so it's got the Eden narrative. And there is, cropping up again in a mythology of the Islamic religions. So again, that's kind of a surreal one, and the link there between that and again with Kubrick as well, and with that 2001: A Space Odyssey. That to find these narratives repeating, both in ancient religions, in my research, in the movie, kind of mind blowing. It does make you wonder whether is any of that deliberate, or is it creative people kind of channeling this, picking up on it and thinking they're just making it up, but in some respect tapping into something more fundamental in human consciousness, right? That maybe this is encoded into our DNA, if you like, this story, or in some way people are able to tap into it. But I don't know, I struggle to say that 2001 is just purely a story. It's a lot of it's just too close to what I've found in my research.
Now we are going to go into a break here in about 6 minutes, Bruce. So I just wanted to point that out. And if you're okay with taking phone calls after the break.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
Awesome. Right on. Yeah, we got lots of people, just a lot of chatter happening in the chat. But I want to go back a little bit because, your books are connected when you have Forgotten Exodus and then you have Human Hybrids. And now you have your upcoming book. How did you get the idea to do these books and the way you're putting them in line?
Yeah, it began with, it's very hard to say the beginning, but for this project, it was when I was in Ecuador. I became involved with a site in the Amazon jungle, in the Yanganatis, which is a particular area of Ecuador's Amazonic region. Now, some people may know it as it's the area of jungle that in legends supposedly is where Atahualpa's treasure was taken and hidden after he was brutally murdered by the conquistadors, and there was a huge amount of treasure on its way to pay his ransom. Now that was redirected and supposedly taken into the Yanganatis, which is a swampy, really hostile region. Now, also in there is a very strange megalithic complex. Now, when I first arrived in Ecuador back in 2012, not long after arriving, I ended up in a meeting with a shaman over some things going on in my personal situation. And they said, would you mind meeting us in town on this day with this other couple that also want to see us to kind of make it easier for them? And I sort of said, yeah, that's fine. And it turned out that this other couple, the guy had just come back from an expedition into the jungle where they had kind of discovered or rediscovered this megalithic complex, and he was there talking about giant hammers and evidence of giants and stuff. And I'm like thinking, this is kind of crazy, because you think I'm probably the only English speaking researcher of ancient mysteries in 1,000 miles, and I just happened to be at the meeting with this guy. This guy that just turns up, when you just think, well, that was orchestrated. Yeah. But that I got involved with that. And then at some point, this going on, I was involved a couple of years with this, but it turned out anyway that I found there was links between this site and these people I mentioned earlier, the Lagoa Santa, right? It turns out that there's Lagoa Santa remains in the mountains and stuff, not far from there, and in a cave site very near to that megalith. So it became pretty obvious to me that there's a strong link with the Lagoa Santa. And if you trace them back to Brazil, you find out, of course, this story of them being the first people of the Americas, going back 40, 50,000 years, and being Aboriginal Australian type, right? So that was where I got connected to this. Hang on a minute, I need to rethink Australia, because it's the continent that really gets overlooked. And this is a huge issue in terms of both conventional history understanding, but particularly in the fringe and in alternative research. Because if you really think about it, not many people talk much about Australia, and the reason for that is there's not obvious things like a giant pyramid or a Stonehenge or those kind of things that we tend to focus on, right? And so it's been largely ignored, and so we tend to think of Egypt and all these places where all the story is going on, and yet there's this big mystery. Where did these civilizations emerge from? What about these kind of Atlantis type stories? And, where's all this knowledge come out of? Now, I would say it's come out of, definitely would say a lot of it's come out of Australia and out of the Aboriginal people there, who've been wildly overlooked and obviously usually dismissed as being Stone Age and nothing to offer the world in this stuff. Turns out that is a load of rubbish. And once I delved into it more, it became very obvious that there was a huge lost chapter in our story that takes you back to Australia.
That is intense. There's a lot of stuff about Australia that we don't know. It's a shame that it's on fire right now too, and I'm wondering if that was on purpose.
It's a terrible situation.
I mean, we could say there's a conspiracy going on with Australia as far as the fires that are happening there right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely people that are utilizing those fires for different, political gains on all sides. So it's definitely a mess. And who knows, apart from all the animals affected, the people affected, there's probably our ancient sites and stuff that are affected. Again, because people are just not aware that there's stuff there. But there's one of the things you notice when I lived in Australia for a little while. I tell you, you drive around. Obviously, people would flag up stuff for me, send me things to see. But also, when you drive around, sometimes you see areas and you think, that looks like a ruined, megalithic site to me. And what you find out is that the stories are that basically when the farmers arrived, they would smash up these things. So if they encountered a stone ring or something, they would just smash it up and bury it, right? Because, they didn't want the problem with it. So a lot of the time, stuff was just mowed into the ground. Yeah, that's the problem. The problem is when you get like the English turning up places, we had a bad habit of wrecking stuff of it, So a lot of things were there. I'll say that. I've had pictures sent to me of sites, and I've been to certain sites. I would say that there's still others there. The Aboriginal elders, aware of. Some people are taken out to sites and stuff. And there's tunnel networks underground with things hidden. There's all sorts there. There's a distrust as well between a lot of elders and the outside world, which we understand because of the history. So they haven't exactly lined up to tell us all their secrets in that respect. It's got to be earned, But there is a lot more there than people realise, and it's certainly that they have a lot of knowledge. And if we want to talk about sort of Atlantis, the lost civilization of the Younger Dryas,
Bruce, we're going to go to a break. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
sure, no worries.
Way past time. We'll be back with Bruce Fenton and Beyond the Strange. Don't go away. We'll be right back right after this.
truth is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Hey, this is Deb, and you're listening to Dave Cruz on Beyond the Strange Radio.
I warn you, this could scare you, as the sound bothers me to listen to. It has always haunted me. What you're about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
I've seen the Martians.
What in heaven's name is it?
I don't know. Beyond the Strange.
Have you ever looked skyward and pondered UFOs, aliens, time travel, alternate universes, and parallel dimensions? Want to explore paranormal activities, ghost hauntings, various cryptoids, such as Bigfoot, sea and lake monsters? Greetings, Beyonders. I'm author Casper Parks, and you are listening to Beyond the Strange with host Dave Cruz. Help spread the word by posting links in forums and social media. Available at Speaker.com, YouTube, and Google Hangouts.
Tea is the #1 cleansing tea in America. We cleanse you with organic ingredients, and when used daily, you can increase your energy. Cleanse from intruders that set up camp in your colon. Cleanse your colon and feel the difference. Colon cleanses can be uncomfortable. Not Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea is mild yet truly effective. Cleanse your insides every day. Easy to make, easy to use, and feel the results. Are you sold? Okay, then here's how to order. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Look for our specials on the front page. Get the Tea also carries top-rated supplements for those who care about their health naturally. Again, log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com and feel the results. And for those of you that arm yourself with information, come to our webinar every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up at GetTheTea.com.
All right, everyone, welcome back. This is Beyond Strange. I am your host, Dave Cruz. Tonight we are speaking with Bruce R. Fenton, and Bruce is the author of the revolutionary Human Origins ebook, Forgotten Exodus, the Into Africa Theory of Human Evolution. He's also the author of Human Hybrids and currently working on a third book. You can learn more about Bruce at www.brucefenton.info and hybridhumans.net. Welcome back to the show once again, Bruce Fenton. Thank you for being on the show tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on again. Yep.
Fantastic show. It's been really, really great. A lot of people in the chat are just having a great time. Super great.
And we haven't even got
topics.
to the catastrophes.
I know, right? So we're just doing like a recap, sort of. But no, it's been a great show, and it's like I said, it's always mind blowing talking to you, Bruce. So I'm really happy that we're talking tonight. Also, for those who want to call into the show, the number is 800-588-0335. Once again, 800-588-0335. And yes, you put a 1 in front of that 8. And you can talk with me and Bruce, and we can get some of your questions and some of your comments about what you think. But yeah, let's get into some of that cataclysms that happened almost 800,000 years ago, Bruce.
Yeah, it's pretty much my favorite topic at the moment. Is devastation at the start of our human story.
No, I'm just kidding.
It's a period which people don't know a lot about. It's not famous, not in the sense of, say, obviously the Younger Dryas events. 13,000 years ago, those are very well known. We know there was something that happened which caused rapid melting of ice, sea level rises went up. Civilizations would have been hugely impacted, and most people associate that period with the loss of like an Atlantis type civilization. Now, whether it was really called Atlantis or not, but clearly we know that there would have been a lot of impact, and it's not quite proven, but it seems fairly clear to me that there was the breakup of either a comet or an asteroid at the time. They found what looks like a possible impact crater. They found the black mat, which is like this material layer. They found the nanodiamonds, and on and on. So I mean, the evidence has been really piling up for that. Then if you go back further, of course, the most famous major cataclysm is the dinosaur one, back to 65 million years ago. But 780,000 years ago was really a fascinating time for these kind of cataclysms and upheavals and stuff. It's just that we haven't really heard much about it. Now, most people, I imagine, wouldn't realize that an object the same size as the one that eradicated the dinosaurs is believed to have hit Antarctica, just 780,000 years ago, right? I mean, that's pretty astonishing. It's you'd think you would have heard about it, right? You think you'd hear about it in school or something. But I mean, partly it's because it's relatively recent, but also for some reason it just hasn't been widely disseminated. There's a couple of articles out there if people have a look around. But there was a chap called Professor Frans van der Hoeven of Delft University in the Netherlands. And he really sort of uncovered evidence for this, that it appears that there was a breakup of an enormous object. He thinks between 3 and 7 miles across, which broke up in the atmosphere with several large pieces hitting the planet, which would have created, obviously craters and, then earthquakes, tsunamis, all the rest of that. And that the reason it didn't have quite as much devastating effect as the one during the age of dinosaurs is because it hit the ice, and so that to some degree limited the force effect, and that also the sea being kind of full of icebergs, that also impacted the waves that would have come out from it, that they had to pass through these ice flows and stuff. So it didn't have quite as much an effect, but that was just that's just one impact. And he thinks that the hole it made in the ice sheet would have been about 200 miles by 200 miles. So I mean, that's a meaty, hole for it to punch, right? So this is an enormous event, even on its own, and the thing is, it's not on its own. This is really just the start of that story. I can nip on to the other part if you like.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just listening. So go ahead.
No worries. It turns out that there was in fact multiple impacts that period. So this is fairly recent. In 2016, it was found out by a team of geoscientists from Heidelberg University that there in fact had been several asteroids that clobbered our planet from different directions, all around the same time, around that 780,000 years ago. That there was an impact in, I think, one down in Tasmania. There was one in Mesoamerica. There's another somewhere in Asia. I think there may have also been one in, I'm not sure if there was one in Africa or not, but there was about sort of 4 of these that they detected. And again, they found the melt glass and stuff from these events. And the thing that really blew their minds is that, not only you've got them coming in from different sides, all the same, approximately seems to be the same time, but these are not pieces from a larger object that's breaking up, which is what most people would assume is, you think, lots of impacts at once. Or is this a big object that's fragmented and that we're getting, different impactors? Turns out no, because when they looked at the material, the chemical makeup is actually different. So it seems that these were distinct asteroids that all start whacking us, from different angles at the same time, which is really anomalous, because you expect to have occasionally one big object hit the planet, every so many thousands of years. What you don't expect is several of them to hit, around the same time, right? And it not to be pieces of one big thing, but, separate objects that all seem to be coming in strangely from different directions and just clobbering us. Now, I'll get to what I think is going on in a minute, but I want to give a couple more first. We've also got the last geomagnetic reversal at that time. Okay, and this is actually the last time that we've had a full magnetic reversal on this planet. And prior to that, they used to occur on average something like every couple of 100,000 years, right? And that was fairly regular. But then what's happened since then is we haven't had one. So whatever happened then, it destabilized the cycles of the magnetic fields to the point where we have never had another complete reversal. Now, we may be in one. We know that the poles, the North Pole, the North Pole's racing along really fast. It's also weakening and stuff. And these are all indicators of a reversal. Okay. Now, we don't know yet, of course, whether it will complete and we'll end up with a full reversal. But we're definitely in what is the early stages that would precede a full reversal. Now, it's interesting that this is happening at this time when a lot of this information is coming out. And when I say about the Mayan calendar turnover and the flip and all the strangeness that's happening. On top of that, we have what looks like the beginning of a new shift of the poles. But anyway, this takes us back to that same period that I'm focused on. And then we have one other major event at that time, which, we have a couple, but in terms of the geological side and connecting to impacts and explosions and all the rest of it, we have another one, which is this anomalous event in which an object enters into orbit around our planet and then later explodes, causing a rain of melted silica debris to come down across about 20 to 30% of the planet's surface. It's a massive area. And this is the australite tektite that we touched on, obviously, in the first half. And this material is literally scattered all the way from Antarctica up to Laos and South China. And just in the last week or so, there's been a news story that came out that's discussed this, saying that that there's a team that believe they have found a crater in Laos, which they connect to this event. But this is yet another aspect of what was happening back then. And most important of all, this is in the time of humans. This is not in the time of dinosaurs. This is a major series of events.
I heard somebody mention that it's possible that the poles are shifting and they're going more towards zero time or the prime meridian. Have you heard anything about that?
I can't say off the top of my head. I'm not sure. I mean, I know that they're moving very fast away from their current location. I think towards, I'm not sure if it was towards Canada or something, but yeah, I'm not too afraid on where exactly they're at now. But.
And I think what they were getting at was because of the Mayan calendar, after 2012, there was nothing, which would be zero time. And that was the emphasis, was everything seems to be going towards zero time. The funny part about that is, to me, like today, I was just telling myself, I can't believe how fast this day is going by. Like these kind of anomalies are happening, and it seems like it's been happening ever since 2012.
Yeah, like people finding this feeling an acceleration of events, an acceleration of time, and anomalies in how they experience time. That certainly. I mean, I think that it is related. I think we, of course, we're magnetic beings, right? We're electromagnetic beings. It goes without saying, we have a field around us. We are interconnected with the field of the planet. And recently there was a study came out that was dealing with this, where they finally sort of proved that we are sensitive to the field. Even though like animals, it's been well understood for a long time, right? Animals can sense earthquakes, and they can find their directions by the field, and all sorts of stuff. It was always a bit of a mystery as to what degree humans, had any of that, right? Now, we're not quite as sensitive. We don't obviously migrate by the field, that kind of thing. But what they found is there's definitely an interaction between the geomagnetic fields and human beings, right? So as this field is, reversing or whatever, what happens to us? That's one of these questions that people don't really, outside of the, I guess, more occult, it's a question that people don't really tackle much. But, there is a definite real world interaction between us and the Earth's fields, okay? Also with the Schumann resonance, these standing waves of the Earth's field, these have an effect on us. And in fact, I used to work for a guy who's a geophysicist. He wrote an article on this, and that what you find is that these standing waves, these Schumann resonance standing waves, they basically echo or mirror some of the effects we see in the human brain, right? They actually come into a kind of a resonance, the actual cycle frequency and all this stuff comes into resonance, particularly when you're sleeping and dreaming, right? So you seem to come into a unison with the field at night when you're dreaming. And it sort of points out, are we in some way in a sort of a two-way transfer, possibly, of information that's recorded in this field? Because you remember, we remember when magnetic fields were used to record things, tapes, for example, right? Computer games and all that were on your tape, on a magnetic field. They record things. Now, are we in some way able to access the stored information in the same way that people used to talk about these, the Akashic records and stuff like that? Is there something in that equivalent to that, like a terrestrial, hall of records that's actually encoded into that field? Now, that's a super weird sort of thought, but the Great Pyramid of Egypt, for example, right, that is actually built in such a way is that the resonant frequencies of the King's Chamber is actually, again, is in harmony with these Schumann frequencies and the Earth field. So if you lie in the sarcophagus there and you do the particular chant, which is in harmonic resonance with the chamber's design, which puts you into an altered state, and I've experimented a bit with this, that you would be in an altered state. So you go out of your body and all that, lying in the sarcophagus, and you would now be in harmony with the fields of the planet. Again, it makes me wonder, is that a machine taking advantage of this effect so that people, Pharaoh could tap into the field and get downloads, right? Downloads of immense information. Now, so all that stuff, I think is something that is a lost knowledge, right? That these beings, people had this understanding, and that there's something happening now with it that's, I think, impacting us. And I think that, that we may well see that as this field keeps moving, it's changing, weakening, that we may see effects in our dreams, in psychic phenomena, in the way that, you experience, as you say, time, experience other phenomena, that it's easy to think, what does it mean? Field's moving, what does that mean? But there may be some very, very strange impacts on the human system as this occurs.
Yes. That's all I can say.
Sorry, I know. I'm reading
That's
out.
all I can say is
yes.
I agree, concur. No, it's fascinating. I was thinking about that too, about how we talk about we are frequency and waves and energy, and what is this doing to us, and what can we do about it? Not only that, but there's so many other things happening on the conspiracy side too. Like now we got 5G coming out, and that's going to be messing us up. All kinds of other things like that. There seems to be a lot of human manipulation or interference, a lot of things with geoengineering. I'm not sure if you're familiar with all this stuff or not, Bruce, but something tells me you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of certainly the debates over 5G and just generally energy pollution and, electric pollution and whatnot. If you look at, say, the Chinese medicine system, they, particularly the experts in that, they say that, all of these fields are having, major effects on our health and on the way we function, and that, the worst, kind of health issues are likely linked to this sea of energy and, radio waves and frequencies and stuff that are, all around us and permeating us. And that they believe it's destabilizing our energy systems, in our human body system, the energy system. And you do have to wonder. I mean, obviously, we live in a soup of these energies in a way that no ancient culture obviously ever did. Not that we know of anyway. And that we now are sort of an experiment, right? Because we're getting more of these all the time. We're going to have satellites in low orbit beaming out, stuff onto us as well. That's all going on. In fact, they want to put up thousands of these micro satellites that will be, boosting the frequencies for 5G and other stuff. And on top of that, we're going to have, we've already got a lot of micro towers and other towers and radio waves, and then we're going to have more. We're going to have these other mini towers for 5G, and it's more a cumulative effect. It's not just 5G. It's the fact that we are bombarded with all kinds of waves. So if you look at yourself as being an electrical being, you have to ask, well, what is that all doing?
It's got to be doing something. We do got a call, Bruce, by the way.
Sorry?
And we have the area code 978. Okay. You are on Beyond the Strange with Bruce Fenton and Dave Cruz. Hold on a second, brother. I can barely hear you. Let me see what's going on here. I don't know what that's about. Hang on. Can you hear us okay? Night Stalker. Yeah, I don't know why you're so low. That's so bizarre. Can you hear me now? Okay, sounds good. All right, definitely. That is the gentleman that goes by the Night Stalker in the chat room in Discord, and he will call us back. I'm not sure what that's all about. We can barely hear him, but yeah, Night Stalker usually has some great information and great questions, by the way. So looking forward to having him call back. Hey, let's see if we got that going on. All right, Night Stalker, you there? Man, it is so low. Bruce, can you hear him?
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure what's going on. And yeah, man, I can barely hear you. I don't know. Just keep trying back. Let me see if I can get someone else to call in, Night Stalker, and then we'll see if I can fix that sound. Sorry about that, brother. No worries, man. It's all good. That is so weird. I don't know what happened there. Anyways, Bruce, I'm sorry about that. Hopefully we'll get him back. We get some more phone calls, and we'll get that fixed. He probably had a great question. And you know what, Night Stalker, if you have that question, you want to put it in the Discord chat, then I can go ahead and ask Bruce. I'm not sure what that's all about. Yeah, nobody can hear you. That's too bad. But yeah, the 5G thing, Bruce, that's something that's been going on for a while. And I am so surprised that nobody is even considering that this is going to have a huge impact on us.
Well, also, there's a bit of uproar as well by astronomers, because they're saying, we're going to have literally thousands of little glowing objects flying around in the sky. Right. So, for astronomers, they're trying to watch the night sky. It's kind of a nightmare, because you can imagine that, where once, you're pretty sure that what you're looking up is stars and stuff. And I guess also for UFO spotters and all sorts of people that have an interest in the night sky, or just generally if you like to be able to look up and not see anything. But there's going to be loads of these things, absolutely loads, thousands. In the end, there's going to be thousands of them if it all goes ahead. And we're just going to have loads of these satellites everywhere flying around. So I don't know, it's an issue that people aren't really considering. Do we really want thousands and thousands of microsatellites up there flying around? I don't know. I can't say that I'm a huge fan of the idea myself.
No, I mean, I don't even think people are even thinking anymore, Bruce. They're basically just looking down, and they're looking on their phones, and
yeah, it's like,
I wouldn't be surprised if that's why they were created in the first place, is to distract us.
Well, they definitely do that. Even I have to admit, I didn't used to use one until a couple of years ago, and it is kind of addictive. I find that it damages your concentration span. If you get used to using them for things, you need to check things, after because to show and other research and things, you probably use your phone, check social media and stuff like that. It's easy to be thinking, I better check in there, or I better check my email, or and to be just sort of distracted from your life by your phone. I know, a friend of mine, he says, he tries to not take it with him when he goes out into the countryside or something, because instead of enjoying being out walking, you start looking at your phone and doing stuff on there. And then the whole point was to go and see the countryside, so they really are, they are quite intrusive in that respect, and we're not, we're I think, as someone, I'm not sure who said this, but, as humans, we're well adapted to Neolithic life, right? We're not well adapted to modern technological life, because we haven't had time. All of our evolution has prepared us to be living essentially as a Neolithic hunter-gatherer or something, right? Because evolution doesn't move so fast that you can go from being a few thousand years ago, living, out in the forest and all that, living from your stone tools and your hunting and all that, to suddenly within a few thousand years, now look, all these computers and these devices, we don't really have the brain for it, right? We don't really have the brain. We're not used to it, we're not adapted to it. So we don't handle technologies all that well. Although we make use of them and stuff, that it's not necessarily the case that we're really well adapted to them. It's not been long enough. And so we're finding there's a lot of negative effects. And obviously we don't understand a lot of these negative effects yet, because it's like a big experiment, and we're obviously finding that there's impacts on children particularly. We know that now attention spans are being destroyed, the ability to retain information is being impacted. Obviously there's health effects, too long of holding tablets and phones and potentially giving you health issues. You shouldn't really be continually holding any device near to your body. And that, really those things are playing out particularly with our children, because they're around it. And even if you want your children to not be, their friends probably are. And then you've got addictive technologies with the, these online games where talk to any parent and see what they think of things like Fortnite.
Oh yeah, and there's some interesting stuff going on in Fortnite, especially when the first Fortnite came to an end. Did you happen to see that on YouTube?
No, but I mean, I'm aware sort of what it's about, the Fortnite and all that, and I've not played it, but I mean, I've seen people playing on it and stuff. I know the kids, from what I talk to the parents stuff, the kids, just not out of the room days, and just violence and continually and screaming and swearing and.
Well, when the game ended, check this out. The way the game ended was it was a huge cataclysm. The Earth and the make believe Earth or whatever world they're in, it came to an end by a huge asteroid.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. You should check it out on YouTube sometime. It's pretty crazy. Yeah. Everyone's like playing and they're doing their thing. The next thing you know, they freeze. There's like they're frozen. They can't do anything. The only thing they can do is look around, and you start seeing different camera angles and stuff. And you can see this, all of a sudden this asteroid comes out of the sky. And then these people are like, what the hell? They can't do anything. And it looks like people on the planet are trying to shoot and destroy the asteroid or whatever, but they just can't do anything. And the next thing you know, it just goes into a huge explosion, and all the Fortnite players are floating in the air, and next thing you know, they all get sucked into like this black hole thing, and then boom, screen's black.
Yeah, right. No, right, okay. No, I didn't know that. No, that's very weird. That's
very weird.
Yeah. They actually had their own cataclysm. But I mean, these sort of games, that's another thing that's molding the youth. It's again very influential, and the ideas that they get from it, and also the way they connect, has been changed fundamentally. The way people think of friendships, and and the way their social lives works, and working through a computer game, an online platform. So I don't know. There's a lot about it that we're not really adapted for. Children are not. The brains are not adapted for it. You only have to go back one generation and these things didn't exist. There's no way that the human brain is able to, evolve that fast to have coping mechanisms for these kind of things. And we know that social media stuff was designed to be addictive. If you look at, what's been come out from some of these designers from Facebook and stuff, and they say that, they feel guilty now for making it, right? They know that it was designed to make people addicted, particularly young people. And that a lot of these guys, they don't let their kids go on social media, right? It's good enough for your kids, not theirs, right? Because they know that it's harmful. Yeah,
that's pretty BS. That's what I think.
So I mean, look, there's a lot of these things that I think is we're in sort of uncharted territory in a lot of respects with a lot of things that are happening at the moment. All of the stuff that the way computer functioning, energy waves, science, technology.
We got devastation going on right now.
Yeah, and then on top of that, we've got head in the sort of ground while there's this. An ecosystem collapse going on. Look, people can and argue about such things as climate change and how that's happening. But I'll tell you what, the ecosystem collapse is very obvious. I mean, apart from the fact you can go to the beach and you can see all the rubbish flowing around in the sea or whatever. If you want to go to the jungles and see how they've cut those down, you can go and have a look. They've worked out now that insect populations have dropped in some places like 70%. In other places even higher, 90%. They've come up with this figure as well. They think that probably about 40 years that insects could be extinct. I mean, think of that. That's a nutty little fact, isn't it? You know, unimaginable growing up that you might live to see the end of all insects on Earth. I mean, that's just bonkers, isn't it? You know, that leads to what's called an upward trophic cascade. And that is a sentence right now people may not be familiar with, but you know, horrifyingly, you're probably all going to hear that sentence more and more in the years ahead, because an upward trophic cascade is when you lose the bottom layer of the food chain, which is, of course, of insects, right? Yeah. From then on, of course, what do you lose next? The next layer, the birds, which have already been dying off, loads of them are gone. The birds go, all the small mammals go, and then obviously the things that eat them, all the foxes and wolves, they all start going. And of course, as you go up, all that's left really is us and our farm animals. Right? Even that can't sustain, because you know we're in an ecosystem. You know, you cannot survive without your ecosystem.
So does
eventually,
it seem like our planet's dying? Is that what it sounds? Is that what's happening?
Well, it definitely takes us out. I mean, there's life that would continue. You know, and obviously there's also plant life and whatnot, and you know, I'm sure there'd be a recovery eventually of insects. But I mean, I don't know that we would weather that. I think that, you know, if you take out all the main levels of the food chain, it's difficult to see how. Certainly, as 7 billion people on Earth, that we can weather that. I find that very unlikely. I think that, you know, this is one of the things that if you don't tackle it now, you won't need to worry about like climate change, which is you know, probably fairly slow. You know, yes, there's things changing. You know, it gets hotter, it gets colder. Yes, we are impacting that with things we do. But I think what, you know, we'll find is that what's more pressing is this ecosystem collapse. That, you know, no organism can survive without its ecosystem. It's a really simple, you know, A plus B equals C type thing, that, you know, we can't live without oxygen, or we can't live without food. You know, there's basic things that, you know, you do need as an organism, right? And that is my concern, is when I look at that upward trophic cascade scenario, and I just think, geez, I can't believe I might live to see the end of all insects. I mean, that's just
sounds very weird, very bizarre, but you know,
very bizarre, very
something to think
creepy,
about. That's for sure.
Silent woods, you know, they call those silent forests, you know, that you know, we may, you know, be walking the forest and you won't hear any birds, you won't see any bugs, you know, you'll just be in a silent forest. And it's
wow, that's something to think about. That's something, you know, just doesn't cross your mind until we start hearing about these kind of things. And you know, Bruce, you're talking about them. You know, that's the good thing, is we have people like you that's bringing this to our attention. You know, it used to be laughed at, the fringe and the paranormal, you know, when mainstream media was talking about other things, and now it seems like we're the mainstream media in a sense.
Yeah, because a lot of topics that, you know, not getting covered in the mainstream particularly well, because of, you know, people have preferred narratives. There's money that controls it. You know, look, if I want to get a story into the mainstream, no matter how interesting are these topics that I cover, I think they're interesting. Hopefully your audience does. But, you know, I've struggled to engage with journalists because, look, they all admit, the ones that do talk to me admit, you know, they're trying to deal with all these things like, you know, Prince Harry and, you know, so-and-so's done this. And that to fit in any sort of major discoveries or anomalous stuff in there is really hard, you know. So what you end up really is having to pay an organization, you know, some kind of PR team just to get your stories in. And a lot of news is from paid stuff, you know, it's PR experts getting people's stories positioned into the news feed. Okay, you know, stars are doing that all the time, right? And then you got the limited bit of flow left of news, which is going to majorly be, you know, sports events, you know, major happenings, you know, wars or whatever. So get anything else, you know, talk about this kind of stuff, you know, and aliens or anything a bit, you know, more obscure. You know, it's a struggle. You know, journalists don't really have time for it. So yeah, really, a lot of these subjects will only be covered in, you know, the independent media. You know, you'll struggle to ever see articles, or they'll be so rare, you know, you'll be lucky to stumble on in mainstream, you know.
Definitely. So when we talk about this cataclysm that happened, what's the next thing that happened throughout the rest of this? I mean, we're here, obviously.
Yeah.
But you know, we had this pole shift. We had the magnetic, you know, poles. They shifted. They reversed. If we look back and see all this, is this what we're looking? I mean, because we're looking at another ice age too, right? Sort of.
Yeah, we're in an ice age at the moment, and we're in a small break, which we are overdue to go back into the cold, which is kind of should, if anything, worry people a lot because, much as global warming is bad, but I'll tell you what, global cooling, if we go back into that and we go back into an ice age, God, we're going to wish that we had global warming, I'll tell you, because, the devastation of the ice is, it's incomparable to the devastation of, a couple of degree rise, right? And that's not to say that a couple of degree rise isn't a serious thing and a sea level rise and all the rest of it. But the ice age, I mean, that would clobber us. If we go back into that, and the ice starts moving back out, across, most of Northern Europe and, across into Canada and everywhere. And, and you got huge, icebergs roving the oceans and all. Look, that's incomparable to what we're complaining about with climate shifts now. So if we take a sudden plunge back into a much cooler period, we lose a couple of degrees or something. That could be a nightmare. And obviously we've got a pending cooling phase with the sun going into an inactive phase, which I think may cause a Maunder minimum, which is a low, historically low in activity, which usually coincides with a cooling phase where we might get like a mini ice age. Now, let's hope that it's just a mini one and it doesn't trigger something, and that we don't trigger that and find that we start slipping back into a really cold phase. Now, hopefully that won't happen, but we're going to see that. They think it could start as early as in about 2024. We may go into this mini ice age. Could be quite nasty. I mean, one of the other things as well that farmers point out is that they have crop issues. When we have these more than minimums, the solar energy changes and all that stuff, right? And it basically impacts crop growth. It becomes a problem to produce enough food. We have that as an additional concern, as well as the weather changes. So you sort of get colder and less food production. So again, you've got, another knock-on effect. All we need is something like, the failure of crop production across a significant region in Asia or something to cause, mayhem, where you got massive population movements. And, we're a very fragile system. We're a global system, interlinked for food and all sorts of stuff. You only need a little link in the chain to really hiccup, to have major problems. And also the great impact event of the solar flare that really took out the phone grids and all the rest of it, going back, I can't remember exactly when it was, but the last time we had a major flare hit us anyway, that happened during a minimum as well, one of these sort of lows, right? So you can imagine if we have all that going on and then suddenly one of these big flares comes out of the sun and whacks us, full on, that could take out our satellites, take out our grid. Imagine you're already in a bit of a cold period. Now you've lost your heating. You've lost all those, the things that keep us going on top of it.
Gone.
So I mean, there are concerns about it. I mean, we should be preparing for that by hardening the grid, and obviously doing anything we can to be ready for these kinds of events, especially when we know there's chances of them happening.
So this kind of stuff is happening without our help. Basically.
Yeah, there's stuff like that is rolling along that, really that there's things we have an impact on, but there's a lot more that we don't, but that doesn't mean we can't prepare for things. Same with asteroids and stuff that, obviously there's talk now of having some kind of defense against asteroids, maybe moving them or blowing them up. And, but we should really be preparing for that kind of stuff because inevitably the asteroids will come again. There will be another event, like there was in the Younger Dryas, and like there was 780,000 years ago, and that we have to be ready for that. We can't be sort of head in the ground. We've got this warning with, if you look at Graham Hancock's work, he talks about that there's this major piece of comet or asteroid that is cycling around and around the sun, and that we pass through its debris field twice a year, right? And that that there's still potentially some very large chunks in that debris field. And it's believed that, in fact, the main body of the source, comet or whatever it was, is still in there. Yeah. And so when we go across, I know he compares this to like a, multi-lane highway that when you run across, you might be lucky and nothing hits you. But at some point, there's a juggernaut coming down there, right? And it even takes that one time, when you run out in front of it and then the juggernaut hits you, and that's what he sort of compares it to. And I think that's a good analogy because, at some point, we're going to have that big piece come around and it's going to come close again. And like, if you look at the stories from the ancients, it was pretty scary. I mean, they even call it, some of them, the Frightener, the Baleful Eye, the Destroyer, the Cleanser, the Purifier, all these terms. Like, it wasn't fun. What they're trying to tell us is it was not fun.
No.
You have, it has effects on our atmosphere. There's screaming sounds, and that there was raining like a bitumen, like tar down. That there was parts of it that hit. The impact events. That. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of text. I'd recommend one here. Is the Cole book, or the Colburn, sometimes known as the Colburn Bible, or the Cole book, and that's got accounts from the Egyptians and the Celts, but also you've got accounts from the Zoroastrians and stuff in the sort of texts up in the sort of Caucasus region. You've got stuff in there about how they had to build a survival bunker underground. Basically, I mean, it's not called a bunker, but it's fairly apparent. What they're describing, and having to, because this winter, the never-ending winter that's coming, and all this stuff, and there's a lot of warnings in there that there's been a major clobbering that's happened around that time of the Younger Dryas, and that again we are in a cycle. These things go round and round, like so many other things. Obviously asteroids go round and round, comets go round and round, the cycles of time whiz round and round, and at some point you hit back onto one of these issues. I think that we're probably on one of them. We've got I'd say the signs and portents of strange things ahead, and certainly it is believed that one of the years where we're at particular risk, I think, is 2024, 2025. So yeah, we could keep our eyes to the sky, and certainly our technologies should be focused on protecting us from things like that, not just blowing ourselves up and satellites that are aiming guns down at us and all the rest of it. We actually some sort of defense shield against these events is much more sensible.
Well, back in the 80s, Reagan was talking about creating the Star Wars defense. And I'm wondering now if it was not so much as because he was worried about Russia or China, but because of some of these meteors or asteroids that we're talking about tonight. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, one wonders, and I know, and of course, he said all the stuff about, if an alien invasion came from space, we'd be united. So, I mean, people have speculated it. Was it something to do with aliens? Was it something to do with asteroids? What was really at the heart of that idea? And now, of course, we've got the Space Force, and we're going back into this idea of the military in space. And obviously, again, people are speculating the same. Why is this happening now? Is it for aliens? Is it for asteroids? Is it for mining asteroids and the space race for things out there? But one has to wonder. But I mean, certainly the problem is that if we look at the way humans behave, unfortunately, mostly one has to suspect that it's a military thing of pointing rockets down at other countries and stuff. That would be my suspicion, just because of our general behavior. That we're not generally too nice to each other, so, and whoever can put orbiting weapons platforms up there and point them down with hypersonic missiles on them and all that, you suddenly become the boss in it of the planet, right? So I think there's definitely a race for that, and I suspect that race has been going on a while. Now we're getting told there's a space force. We should assume there's been a space force of some sort for a lot longer, because we don't get told when a decision's made. We get told the hand-me-down information, right? So if we're getting told they're going to be putting stuff in space now, that means they've already got it up there. That's where I'd look at it. I don't think we get told on, we've got an idea, we're going to go up into space, and it's like, we're telling you now because we've already been up there and we've already got weapons platforms up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, they tell us, they tell us, years after they do that. Stuff, I mean, look, we've been charting the stars for a long time now. I mean, who knows? We probably have bases on different planets, even the moon, who knows? But I think that it is at a point where we may need to find another place to live, if you know what I mean.
Well, I'm open to the idea that humanity should expand into space. I mean, it's logical, but the first thing I think is that we have to preserve this planet, because we're not going to find anywhere near us anyway, a planet that is so suited to human life, right? I mean, we've developed in symbiosis with this planet for a vast period of time. We're, as I say, linked to its magnetic fields, its cycles, its gravity. So, I mean, I think one thing we have to be careful of is this idea, like, say, with, Musk and some of these billionaires that are talking about colonizing the moon, colonizing Mars. There's another one that's wants to build floating cities, in orbit and all this stuff. That's all well and good, but at the end of the day, you're going to struggle to end up with the kind of paradise that we actually had, which we're busy destroying. And also, if we can't preserve this planet, how do we believe we're going to terraform Mars? We can't even keep this place working. So how are we going to really terraform a barren world and turn it into, like a livable planet? What we seem to be good at is destroying livable planets, right? So I really struggle with this. I think that, the effort should start with fixing, and preserving what we've got, and then moving to the stage of, right, we've got a handle on that, now let's try and build, bases on the moon and asteroids and Mars and all the rest of it. That's not to say you don't develop the tech to do that in the meanwhile, but I do think that we should be wary of the idea that, let's just do that, because it's not like we can move this, people off of this planet. It'd be like, half a dozen people or something, right? These are not options to save people that are here. They are to restart, a colony somewhere else with a handful of people and carry on there. So if anyone thinks, we can just go off to live on another planet, it's like, no, they're not going to carry 7 billion people off into space. There's no way to do anything like that. It's going to be a handful of people, and it may even be just a handful of very rich people flying off in their spaceships.
Yeah, definitely the elites. I mean, when we saw 2012, it was the elites who had all this knowledge about these ships that, there was only a handful of. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the way it really is. There's so many movies that show this kind of thing, predictive programming
bases, underground bases and stuff. There's lots of these bunkers, luxury bunkers that you can buy, that if you're rich enough, they've been building them for years, these luxury survival bunkers, right? I mean, I haven't got, I'm sure you and I, no one listening has a luxury survival bunker, so, things kick off, we're not going to be the ones, carried in our limo to our 5-star underground base, we're going to be the ones who have to, fight tooth and claw just to get by, so it's a different world. If you've got $1 billion in the bank, you're preserving yourself against all sorts of stuff, I mean, if you look at where some of these guys are buying up land, they're buying away from the coasts, in South America, in areas with lots of fresh water. They're going, green. They're having solar panels fitted, off-grid luxury condos that are running from wind and solar. And some of these people are in the oil industry, they're in the bloody oil industry, but they've got, when it comes to their own hideaway, it's all green, solar and all that, so it sort of shows really they know what's, coming down the pipe, that there's a lot of problems. And the fact that oil's running out, there's finite supply that, depending on who you talk to, I think we've hit peak oil, probably fair into that. I mean, every now and again, a new well is found, but then our usage of oil is going up. So, I mean, it's, it's a finite resource. It's not going to renew, right? And even if people say, we switch to green, I don't know that we're going to do that in time. So this is another issue. And also we use oil for plastics, right? So, I mean, what replaces that overnight? All the things you think that we make from plastic, right? So there's a huge issue with that. Again, so I mean, these people sort of know that there's, we've got a whole cluster of different issues that are here now, or looming so close on the horizon that, they are already either looking at their lunar bases or their underground, facilities and all this stuff, because, they're hedging their bets at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you hear it in politics as well. I mean, when you listen to CNN or Fox News or something like that, there's always somebody that's talking about not global warming, but climate change now. And they're talking about how we're not going to survive past, 7 years or 8 years now. I mean, it's crazy, but it's something to think about. I mean, what can we do, Bruce? What do you feel we should be implementing right now besides just recycling?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. The major ones, like for example, is you got to look at who are the main polluters, wasters, and if you're into the sort of the global warming ideas like CO2, who's the main producers of these gases, and what you really find is it's global militaries, right? And at the top of that, who brings the most horror and destruction in the world anyway. Global militaries, really.
Yep.
So, I mean, what we should be tackling first is like, why the hell, if we've got all these problems, why are we still spending trillions on military? It doesn't make any sense, because what at the end of it is the point? You know, if we are all going to be killed off by all these other things, why are we still spending money on worrying about if such and such a country might do this to us? If we know that there's going to be no insects, there's going to be these asteroids, there's going to be all this. What is it? It's mental, isn't it? It's totally mental to think that our most pressing issue is paranoia about each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that we will spend trillions on that when that money could have gone into all of the ecosystem issues, finding solutions, of course, peaceful solutions, technological solutions, also funding existing eco projects, also using that to, support people who are alive now to have better lives, right? Particularly within the countries where that money is getting wasted, obviously, whether that's mostly first world nations, UK, Russia, US, whatever, that have quite large military budgets. That money, I think any of us could find a better use for that money, right? And imagine having at your disposal like $1 trillion to spend on fixing some of these problems. You could fund basically every conceivable eco project, right, quite easily, and probably make friends with a lot of enemies by helping them out, putting some water, fresh water for them, running water, yes, whatever. You know what I mean? You can suddenly, in a very different world. Now, that's one thing, and not a lot of people talk about that. They talk about how, you and I are driving our car too much, that we're selfish. But what about the fact that, you've got these military that are, they're going around the world all the time in ships, planes, by the thousands, absolutely destroying the oceans, destroying, the air, and all the rest of it. So that's a major one that is not really talked about enough because it's a political hot potato. Nobody really wants to say that the military-industrial complex is, again, causing loads and loads of problems, like it always has been, since we were warned it would, and it has gone on to, of course, that we have that. And then additional to that, I think that, well, we have to also tackle the fact that we have this, overproduction of loads of crap, that we're just producing, and that we believe that the thing we have to worry about is economic slowdown, right? There's the great danger of what if the economy slows down or it crashes? But there's no way to have infinite growth on a finite planet. Right, it's a fundamental. You cannot have infinite growth on a finite resources. Yeah, so we know that that's a brick wall that we're charging into, and yet we're still doing all this obsolescence by design, making crap that only lasts a few months, goes into the bin. Packets within packets. The plastic bag's got the plastic thing in it, and each individually wrapped plastic thing in there, and any way to use up the resources. We just seem to just pile out this crap, obviously the phones and all the rest of it, every time something new comes out, the rest has to go in the bin, and we've been doing that for a long time now, and the mountains of garbage, I don't know if you've seen, there's a documentary on this on Netflix. So, most of the stuff can't be recycled, and even the things we think are recycled, a lot of that's just piled up in other third world countries, in big stacks, in heaps, polluting places, or floating around in the ocean, right? So, until we can also tackle that what do we really need, like using these resources for real needs, not just because it's nice to have every piece of crap in the store, So I think that's a mind change as well. We have to start thinking, no, we need these resources are not going to keep going forever. And do like the Native Americans thought, think 7 generations ahead. Like if you were doing that, we wouldn't do half the things that our culture does today,
It's really scary how far this country has gotten as far as not recycling when we should. I mean, growing up, I remember the commercials with the Native American with, crying about the pollution and everything, and you think that was a big enough hint to, hey, we need to do something now. No. And we haven't managed to do most of the things that when we were kids, when it was the whales were getting killed. Well, they mostly, they managed to get that down a bit, but they're still dying. The seas were getting polluted. Well, they're worse than ever. The trees were getting chopped down the Amazon. We were going to stop that. We didn't manage to stop that at all. It went on faster and faster. The only thing I think we managed to deal with was the ozone layer hole, wasn't it? I think that's about the only one that's gone away. Everything else has got worse, right? And so, this has been going on for decades. Now the oceans are too warm and they're too blue and they're full of chemicals and more garbage than fish. I think they said in a few years be more garbage than fish. So, even the things that from 20, 30, 40 years ago, most of those we haven't dealt with. That's one of the most worrying facts, isn't it? Is that even the ones that are long way out that we knew about, we really haven't managed to even put a dent in them. Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, look, Australia is hopefully, not burning as much I mean, I know they got rain. I don't know if they got enough.
Rain.
They got some help with the firefighters. You know, people came together and did a lot. I don't know if they were doing it so they could look good. You know, some of these, you know, entertainers and, you know, big Hollywood people, you know, throwing money around saying, oh, we're going to give it to Australia. I mean, that's great. I'm not saying it's not good, but there's so much more that, you know, that things need to happen. And I think part of it is we just need to leave the damn planet alone. Just take care of it.
There's a few simple things, you know, I mean, definitely we need to roll back on this ceaseless production of stuff that people don't really need. I mean, it's, you know, I don't know, what point do we do it? Do we wait till everything's run out, you know, and then it just has to be like, you know, all the things just come to a crunching stop. But yeah, and it's interesting as well, the billionaires and multi-millionaires, and I was moaning about this the other day on social media, that, you know, like if they got, you know, if they're seeing what we're seeing, all these problems, you know, why aren't they just sticking a load of their wealth into fixing these problems? You know, because how much can you take with you? You know, if you've got 100 billion or something, I mean, really, you know, what are you going to do? Just build it doesn't make sense, does it? Because when you think, you know, your kids have got to live in this mess, I mean, your grandkids, you know, if you had 100 billion, I'd like to think that you'd sit around thinking, right, you know, what projects and stuff can I fund that will actually help this from, you know, not turning into a world with no, you know, no animals and all the rest of it. But, you know, that surely they could come together. I mean, if they had the, you know, look, I'm skeptical of the kind of people at the top. But I mean, look, if they are normal in some respect, if they have any normal thinking, that you'd think that they would prioritize that, you know, look, their children have to live in the mess, you know, to put their money into these projects. I don't really get it, because if you take the billion with you, what, in your grave, are you going to have a bling bling coffin or something? I mean, what is the point, right? When you've got millions or billions or whatever, you can't spend it all, can you? I mean, you know what I mean? There's a point where you've got to think, well, maybe I need to put like 90% of this into actually, you know, addressing this major crisis. And the ecosystem's collapsing, and this is a major crisis. You can't just think, oh, well, you know, business as usual. You know, to me, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, Bruce, we got to wrap it up. It's at the end of the show, man. And geez, I am so, again, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a great night. I know there's a lot of stuff we didn't get to, but
that's right.
We'll save it for the podcast.
Yeah, no worries. It was a nice chat. Thank you.
Thank you again. And once again, where can they find you at, Bruce?
If people want to follow me in social media, I'm on Twitter at ExogenesisHH. And also, I mean, you can find me on Facebook. I'm mostly on Twitter. And then my website's brucefenton.info, hybridhumans.net, and ancientnews.net are the sort of the main places. And my books are on Amazon. So if they look me up on there, they'll find all of my books.
Awesome. Great stuff, Bruce. Thanks again. And we'll stay in touch. And, you know,
awesome.
Hopefully we'll get through this all together.
Yep. Thank you very much. I'm hopeful for the future, even if it might be a bit of a rough ride.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Bruce, have a great night, and we'll talk soon. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bruce Fenton, everyone. Wonderful, wonderful, awesome show. Wonderful guy. A lot of information. All right, really quick. Beyond the Strange is owned and copyrighted by Dave Cruz. It cannot be simulcast, rebroadcasted, copied, or without written consent of Beyond the Strange. Also, the views and opinions are not necessarily that of Beyond the Strange. Hosts, guests, and affiliated networks. Listeners are encouraged to conduct their research and formulate their own opinions. And I'm going to say good night. Thank you, everybody in Discord. And thank you, Luna Sparkles, for hanging out in YouTube. Until next week, thanks again. Have a great night. And we'll see you later. Bye-bye.